Welcome to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. My name is Melissa Moore, the Retail Advisor and Rethink Retail Top Retail Expert for 2024. Each week, I'll be joined by industry experts, retailers and brands to dispel the myths, share knowledge, and give you an insight into the retail industry. Listen back to previous episodes on your favourite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. And while you're there, please do subscribe to the podcast so that you get to listen first every single week. So in the meantime, grab that cup of tea, sit back and listen in to Season 7 of the Retail Tea Break podcast. So to celebrate the third anniversary of the Retail Tea Break podcast and the launch of Season 7, I am delighted to be rejoined once again by some amazing retail experts. So if you listen to the first episode of this season, you'll know I've been joined by Torben Valsted, Linda Johansen-James, Chris Igwe and Ian Scott. Lads, I'm delighted to have you back again for yet another episode.
Welcome.
Thank you.
Thanks for having us back. You're a brave woman, Melissa.
I certainly must be after the last incredible episode. And we covered so much, but purposefully, and I think a lot of people will have realized, we didn't touch on one of the core aspects of retail. We didn't talk about our people. We certainly talked about relationships and selling and I suppose technology, which was an interesting point. So again, if you haven't listened back, please do. But as I say, we didn't talk about our people, which we know for all of us, certainly in what we do in retail is so important. So I wanted to have this standalone episode to really hear your views about, I suppose, what you've seen and bringing in what your day jobs are for a lot of you, but also what's going on out there. So, Linda, you've worked with thousands of retail staff over the year, and your data clearly shows a link between training that you do and that you deliver and increased sales. Like, it sounds so simple. And I suppose a lot of what we talked about in that first episode was basics, keeping it really simple and common sense. But why then aren't retailers or more retailers prioritizing this?
Boy, that is such an incredible question because you can see the retailers that do. And, you know, for me, really the epitome of the team members who are trained in customer service and in sales makes such a difference in your experience in the store. And right now, I don't think there's anyone better than Lush, regardless of what store you go in. And Ian, thanks for introducing them all over again to me, because listen, it doesn't matter if you go to London, if you go to New York, if you go to Miami, everyone treats you the same. They're, hi, welcome to Lush. Oh my goodness, are you familiar with us? I mean, the basics of sales training, they do. It's about treating you. Here's how I train everybody. Treat everybody that walks through the door like they were your grandmother, right? How would you speak to them differently if they were your grandmother? And that's what Lush has done so well. That's what we did so well with Proactive and Barbell and Great Foods and all the brands that we worked with. But I don't understand why retailers aren't taking the statistical data and taking that extra week to really train their salespeople to take care of the customer. It's amazing to me. And I think if they did, they would see that, first of all, it would lower the turnover. We're talking about this all the time, that we can't keep employees. Well, you can't keep them because you don't train them. I mean, plain and simple. I'm going to take Torben's view here, and Chris knows that I'm this way, and I think Ian does. That I'm just going to bottom line it here, because to me, if you are not training your people properly, they're not going to stay. They're not going to be happy. It's those people that are on their cell phones all the time who scream at you from the back of the room, welcome in, and then they never talk to you again. I don't understand it. The easiest way for us to stop all of those things and increase our top and bottom line, which is what, as retailers, right, we want to do, is train your people. Train them how to take care of the customers. And then if they still don't, here's what you do, is you hire smart, and then you have to make a decision to let them go if they're not mirroring your core values and your training expectations. I'm sorry, but this is just not rocket science.
But what about the fact then, Linda, extension to your thought of the compensation package, so payments, because retail is not seen as one of the best paid jobs in general. And as you know, or you may know, in certain countries and cultures, retail is at the bottom of the food chain.
Yep.
Nobody wants their child to be in retail because it's just like, is there nothing else you can do and you've got to go into retail, that kind of thing. And then the extension of that is that the pay is not fantastic. So how do we get over that then in our industry?
Commission.
Increase salaries, increase pay, increase packages, give them more time off. In Europe, we just don't get enough hours off or weeks off anyway, so we could do with a few more weeks. What can we do to help? How can we make that change?
I think we have to treat the employees the way they deserve to be treated. And I don't know if it's in paying them more. I think it's in the total overall how people look at retailers, right? I mean, they look at us as we're kind of the bottom of the barrel, right? But we're not. So I think I don't know if it's about giving people more time off. I think it's about compensating them properly, about commissioning them when they sell more, they can make more. I was on straight commission for 20 years, raising my daughter as a single mom. And guess what? If I didn't sell, I didn't eat. And so I think if we compensate people properly, pay them commission when they sell, treat them appropriately, respect them, right? Boots on the ground. How many times do you see the people, the top CEOs of companies actually going out and talking to their salespeople, working the stores?
No, so I agree that compensation is part of it, Linda. I do think that from the foundation is about excitement. We have to create excitement among people. We have to enjoy this, right? And actually working at retail is one of the best ways to start your career. And it's totally overlooked. If you're out there on the front line and you're hearing what the consumers are telling you every day, and you're taking all of the hustle sometimes with consumers, right? But also all of the pleasant interactions, and you're learning every day more than anyone is learning in the office. That's totally overlooked. When you're out there on the front line, you learn much more than anybody else in the company. No, and we have to harness that, and we have to give it love. That engagement with the consumer, they don't get in the office. Then when I come to the office, I know things that they don't know. I can do things that they can't do. No, and we have to give love to that, but we lost the faculty of that.
I completely agree with you there, Torben. It's interesting because I'm just thinking the best buyers, the best merchandisers I know, the best visual merchandisers I know, all have this incredible connection with the shop floor. So our main retail staff who meet the consumer every day, of course, that's who they're connected with. It's not about, as you said, sitting in their office. It's not about jetting, across the world. It's about having those real conversations with the kids that are working on that Saturday or people that are in there full time. But on that, and again, all know that I'm so passionate about training our people on the shop floor. It's how I've built my career in the last few years. Ian, I'm really interested on your take in one specific part of this training, because I think perception's starting to change, but I could be wrong. And I suppose with all your time spent in stores doing retail safaris, I'm really interested on your thoughts on product knowledge, because do they need to have it? Do people care? Should they have? Or actually, can they just be using those screens that we talked about in the previous episode? Can we just rely on retail media to do the work for us?
Well, I mean, the training is important, as both Torben and Linda were sort of saying there. Now, the challenge you have these days is you could be a member of staff in a store with 500 SKUs, 1,000 SKUs, okay, and you're supposed to be an expert in all of them. You can't be, you're a generalist. The customer that comes in has been online for 3 days researching a product, and they're going to know way more than the member staff, because they've gone and checked in comparisons, and they know what the price is in other stores, and they know the competitor products and the alternatives, and they've read the reviews. It's impossible for a member of staff to do that. So the challenge is, how do you arm staff to deal with that sort of challenge? And it does come back to training. I mean, you can have product training. I mean, I, like many people, had a retail job when I was at school studying, had a Saturday job, as we call it in the UK. And I was in an electrical store, so it was hi-fi, audio, video cassettes. My claim to fame is I sold the first CD player in my town. That's showing how old I am. But what I loved was there was one company that would come in and talk about the products, and they invited us to their factory and showed us around. There were loudspeakers, audio loudspeakers. and sat in their listening room, listening to the different products. I went back in and we had this amazing array of speakers, and they were all wired up to this push button console. And you could put a CD on, and then you could press different buttons and play it through different speakers. Now, it was no surprise that I would put the Mission speakers on. This brand was called Mission, because I knew them and I could talk about them 10 times more detail than all of the other brands. So I would favor them. I bought them myself. I bought into that knowledge. And I think a lot of brands could do, particularly when it's a wholesale environment, brands who go in and talk to the store staff or take them out and train them, you get an exponential return. So you as a brand, you can invest in that. And coming back to what Linda was saying, because she knows how I feel about Lush as well, I believe they have the best staff as well. You go to any store anyway. But what I love is when you talk to them, they recruit on personality and they train product knowledge. So if you worked at the Body Shop, that doesn't mean you're right for Lush. If your personality and attitude isn't right, you're not the connection. You know, you can train product knowledge, you cannot train personality. And they have that ability. And also, each store manager has the ability to choose how many staff they have in their store. So if they want to up the staff count by 20%, they can. They obviously have to justify it. But what I love is their feet on the ground in the store making those decisions. I saw a wonderful post on LinkedIn the other day going, if you want to employ a business leader, employ a retail manager. They run a whole ecosystem. You know, the Lush store on Oxford Street, I think there's 200 employees that operate in that store. There's stock inventory, ordering, HR, direct sales, marketing, engagement, training, you logistics. You're running a whole ecosystem. And so getting that knowledge and communicating it back is incredible. And one of the things I did want to pick up on as well is one thing that really frustrates me when it comes to staff training, particularly in grocery. In the UK, every grocer is running scared of Aldi. Aldi are value and they're doing it cheap. So everyone is trying to cut costs. And the biggest and quickest and easiest overhead is staff. They are an annoying overhead to most supermarkets. And I know people that work in grocery, and all the joy and fun has been stripped out of this job. The staff canteens gone, the staff vending machines gone, the in-house HR have disappeared from the stores. Their requirements and demands are increasing while there's a reducing overhead. It's taken the fun, and there's no surprise that people are then rushing to leave retail. Like everyone has said, it's not perceived as a desirable job anyway. And you take all of the fringe benefits out, don't train people, expect them to work harder. Lo and behold, they do not care. And as a result, the experience is bad. You know, there's that wonderful cliche story I see appearing lots and lots, you know, a CFO and a CEO talking about staff training budget. And the CFO goes, what if we train them and they leave? And the CEO goes, what if we don't and they stay? You know, and it is so true. You know, you invest and there are hidden benefits. I call them like these benefits that don't appear on the spreadsheet. The cost of the staff, the training and the recruitment and everything is a known cost. What they don't know is the cost of them not being trained so they do a shitty job. And the other thing is if you train them well, they stay longer, your recruitment and training costs reduce. But they don't see the correlation between investing in training and the benefit of reduced costs in other areas. This is another example of not understanding the bigger picture of what's going on. Sorry, I've veered way off your question. I hope
I passionately agree with you on this, Ian. I really do. From like yourself, so many people I know that I suppose I grew up in my career in retail. You know, once I'd finished university, like a lot of people, I stayed. I didn't go away. I stayed, and I've had, like all of us here, this phenomenal career in the industry. But it has been stripped of joy with an awful lot of brands at the moment. However, on that, they've stripped their people of their joy. And as you said, all the little aspects they used to give them, including the big training pot of money. But yet, on the other hand, they're obviously pushing big bucks behind other aspects. And Torben, this really intrigues me because why are we driving footfall to stores that aren't staffed well enough? And the impact is then that shelves are half empty, they're dirty, no one has any freaking product knowledge or general nicety knowledge, as Linda would talk about. Torben, where are we going? So we're driving all our customers into store or online, but actually we're not fulfilling orders and we're not serving them properly. Surely from a brand perspective, we're doing serious damage right now.
Yeah, I would be tempted to say beats me, but I'll continue a little bit where Ian left off. Now, I think it all starts from the top. I've been saying recently that, you know, we have this CEO title, right? this chief executive officer. What the hell? What are we trying to do, right? The chief executive officer is like saying, I'm the boss 3 times, right? I'm the chief, I'm the executive, I'm the officer, right? What it should mean is I'm the consumer experience officer. I have to take care of all of the consumers that we are in contact with through our business and we want to build bonds with. That's my responsibility. That's where it starts, no? And in my opinion, people buy people first. I have this illustration behind me to show some of the evolution of technology throughout time, right? And the thing is with technology, it's doing a lot of great things and we become zappers. We can watch all the Netflix movies and like this. When I was young, I had to look at the newspaper in the morning to decide what I'm gonna watch in the evening, right? But it's also making us feel remote. And people buy people first.
Yep.
And we should never forget that. During COVID, we started thinking that digital is going to take over. And then we started to down prioritize the physical store. For me, it all comes together in the shopperverse. We talked about that in the previous episode. And when we are starting to cut costs, like Ian was talking about in the physical stores, they are the face to the consumer. And we are losing face. And we are not only losing sales in the stores, we are losing them online as well. And we are losing in total in the shopperverse, and we are putting pressure on the whole thing. My old mom, I loved my mom, and not to make it mushy or personal, she's 82 now. She was working in clothing stores until she was 75. No, she was working in a clothing store where there were 5 ladies working, and she represented 50% of the sales.
Yeah.
Wow.
And you would have shoppers coming back to the store saying, "Is Lillian here today?" And if the answer was no, they would walk away. And why? Because she was like an advisor for them, right? So she said to me, told me it's very simple. You know, I had a lady, she was looking in the mirror. It was obvious that was not the best dress for her, no? And she could see that, I could see that. A lot of staffers would be trying to push just selling that dress. But my mom would be like, you know what? This is not the best on you. I have something that will look much better on you, that fits your style much better. And they loved that, the candor, the honesty, the integrity, the people buy people first, right? And we started to use technology words for what people is all about. We started talking about personalization. I hate the word in a certain way, right? What the hell is personalization? It's getting close to personal. No, retail is personal. It's not personalization, no? So if you want to introduce personalization in retail, use it to enhance the experience through people. Give them the technology so they know us better, can answer better, can answer faster. Don't have to wait 10 minutes for them to see if the product is in back of house and so on, right? But it's a people business. And we should not forget that. And it starts with the CEO, the consumer experience officer, and it goes across to the full experience that we have in the store. And we need to also make staff in the store feel loved with their job. They don't love it today. They just don't. 99% of people, except the lush ones that I meet in retail stores, they just don't love their job. And you see it like this, no? The first question you get in a retail store today is, can I help you?
Yes.
Right? So all the training that we are pumping millions into, and they're still asking, can I help you? And what is the answer? No, thanks, I'm just looking. We're getting it square wrong. But it also means there's a huge potential. You know, there's so many great people in retail, and we can help develop them. We can help make them even greater at selling, that they give them experience they can use in any job later on in their careers. But we don't focus on that. We just say, okay, we cannot pay them so big salaries, so we can't really motivate them. Hell, we can. This is a great place to learn. It's the best school, no? Better than going to Harvard, trust me.
Listen, I know Chris wants to say something, but I mean, that is just so true. I just read an article, I'm not going to say who, 2 days ago, where the company's going out of business, but they wanted to pay the CEO millions of dollars in a bonus. It was a retailer. And I'm like, take that millions of dollars and give it to the people who make the cash register ring. Those aren't the people that sit in the office. Those aren't the people that have the big C-suite jobs. Those are the boots on the ground people that represent us. When my husband and I had AKM, every single of our corporate employees had to go work one of our retail stores for 2 weeks. They had to ring up customers. And then when they said, oh, those people are doing this, we're like, wait a minute, those people pay your paychecks. Those are the ones that the consumers see first, that the customer interacts with. I did a post the other day, and a gentleman that worked for me for 10 years posted on there, and he said, Linda, the reason we worked there is because we felt that we were taken care of, that the company cared about us. And that's what our retail employees want to feel. They want to feel like they're not the bottom rung on the food chain. I may not say it as eloquent as Torben, but they are who should be compensated first. The people who make the cash register ring.
I just want to add something on the Lush piece, which totally agree with everything said, which kind of blew my mind. And for those who don't know it, when I was in the Liverpool store, talking to the store manager, and one thing I found very intriguing and very powerful was that he explained that the recruitment process, in fact, is not just a solo decision on his part, but the rest of the team, the entire, so when somebody goes in, it's not about the CV, they go in for a day, potential individual being recruited, but they had to touch various different parts of the store, and it's the staff in the store, each of whom had interacted with that individual potential recruit, that had the opportunity to give their point of view on whether to hire or not that individual, which I'd never heard of anywhere else in my entire retail career. And I thought that was incredibly insightful and very powerful. Obviously, Ian, you know them way better than I do. Maybe they do that in other stores, but I just think as a blueprint, that is something for us to take away in the industry. Didn't want to talk about that specifically. We've obviously focused a lot on the retailers, the tenants, the brands, but as Melissa, you know, and the rest of you as well, I've had a career in different parts of the industry. So working with brokers, the trade association, very closely with landlords, although I've not actually been hired into a landlord organization, asset managers, etc. And I think one of the things that comes across for me, which is fundamental, is the fact that we, as Torben says, it's top down. So it's got to come from the CEO, C-suite level, and all the way down. Two things are fundamental. One is the human resources, training budget, whatever you want to call it, has to be a significant and important part of the business strategy anyway, going forward. It should always have been like that, but it's not. So that budget has to be appropriately solidified, created, developed, and founded on a strategy that is going to allow individuals to grow in the business. That's the second point for me. We're not doing enough and have lost sight of a career path across businesses anyway. You come into a company, you don't know if or where you're going to end up, even geographically as well. You can move across France or the UK or Netherlands or whatever, because your contract actually says you can, the company can move you within reason, but generally speaking, that's the case. If that is the case, then give us a path to where that future may lie. So for me, career path is the other piece. Then the third piece I think that underpins that is that those of us who are seniors, executives, whatever you want to call us, who have a responsibility, is to then take the review process seriously. I do not know that many people who actually allow and put time aside for the annual review with their staff to really get to understand what has gone on in the previous 12 months. How did they achieve their goals or didn't they? Where are they wanting to go? For me, that was a privileged opportunity to get close to my staff, to really understand what had rattled their cage during the year, where they saw things going, for us to get into a little bit of a wrestle, because as staff, we always think we have performed better and should get a huge salary increase anyway, no matter how bad we've been. But having that opportunity to get close to our staff allows us to then help and support them in their journey.
Chris, on that note, one question for you, of course. You are the expert in breaking down barriers. No, so there is a barrier very often between headquarters and the front line, the retail stores, right? And we all know that, we've all experienced that. In your opinion, when you're talking about career path and reviews and so on, how are we going to break down the barriers between the front line, the whole retail setup, and the headquarters, and appreciate also career paths for people from stores going into headquarters if that's what they want in the future?
Yeah, it's a really good point, Torben. And I think one of the ways, it's not the only way, and you'd have seen this in your Nike and Carlsberg and other businesses, is where the staff can meet corporate. So where you actually hang out together. Sometimes it's a big event, annual get together and a shindig and have fun. But there are also smaller meeting opportunities that can be created between the store personnel and the corporate, for want of a better description. It's a step-by-step process. It shouldn't happen brutally, and it shouldn't happen once a year. So for me, that is one of the ways in which it can and should be done. But then the other way equally is where there is a communication, and you're big on this as well, Torben, is how the communication ends up between the store and corporate. My idea might be the totally crazy one, but I've got an idea as to how to improve operations in a store. How can I bring that forward? Do I have to go through X number of channels to get to who I need to speak to, or can I go through another path? So it's providing different steps, which mean my voice is important, my voice is valuable in the store, and I can be heard. And rather like the Japanese, as we all know, Chinese, but maybe Japanese and Koreans more, where there's actually an expectation of offering advice on ways to improve the performance of the business, of the store, and that's critical. If we can create this openness for dialogue, then it's going to make things so much smoother.
It sounds
Just a
like
few
at the end of the
thoughts.
day, it comes down to respect. Companies that do this, and I know we talked about Lush there. I know Lidl are really good with their people and they have that career path that you talk about, Chris, but there's a huge amount of respect with the really good brands that look after their people. There's that basic fundamental communication is excellent. You know who to go to, whether it's a great idea or an issue, but they have real respect for their people and the role that they play, whether that's a 4-hour co-worker on a Saturday or C-suite. There's a respect for everyone in the business, which again, for retail, is absolutely what's needed. But to kind of finish us off, Chris, and gosh, it almost brings me back to that very first episode that we recorded, a couple of years ago. You boiled it down to basics like that. You talked about service and the simple things and keeping it real, whether it's on the shop floor or in retail in general. What do you think that looks like today?
We've had many an exciting conversation, you and I, Melissa. I'd love to say we're improving, but in fact we are regressing. When I look, and I have the privilege of working across many different markets, as you know, from the US to China and across Europe, Middle East, and Africa, over the different phases of my professional career. And unfortunately, I cannot say that it is getting better, which then begs the question, how do we make it better, which is a broader conversation. But I would take the example of one of my former clients, 7 for All Mankind, for whom, when they were transferring out of VF Corporation into an Israeli company that they're a part of, or were, I don't know if they still are, it was a fascinating process to go and visit every store from Switzerland to Austria to the UK, and to see individuals who would actually, in every single store, the staff would fall on their sword for the 7 for All Mankind brand. Why? Because they loved their brand. They loved the company, and it was treating them incredibly well. It wasn't about compensation. It wasn't about salary. It was just the fact that they loved the product. They loved the merchandise. They loved the way they were being treated. And then they offered incredible service to the customer that was coming in. And so that service piece for me, it's about what do I, as an individual in that store, want to offer to anybody who comes into that store. So I own that decision. I own that choice. I own that relationship. And then I build on it day in, day out, week in, week out, and so on. And it goes through. So if we can just get to the point where we empower our stores, whatever position they have, they could be part-time, they could be full-time. Some part-time, and you probably all know this, some part-time salespeople actually sell way more than full-time stores.
Everyone's nodding there. I love
Yes.
this. Absolutely.
So it's not about how many hours you put in, it's about your attitude towards those you're working with. So for me, it sounds simple, it's complex, but it's about the quality of the individuals that are being hired. We've got to go back to a point of we just don't give anybody a job. We give people a job who are able to deliver on the basis of the brand, values, ethics, and expectation. To your point, Melissa, about some brands, people just stay for years, decades. They're not getting the best of salaries, but they just love where they are. And they would, like Seven for All Mankind, they'd fall on their sword for the brand.
So maybe just to add to that, I heard once there was a psychologist who was talking about service and customer experience. He said, service is understanding in advance what the customer needs or wants, and then serving it with grace. And that kind of stuck in my mind because it's kind of beautiful, right? This idea of we have to try to understand it in advance what the customer really wants from us and what they need. It doesn't mean we have to fall on our knees and give everything, but this kind of attitude, this kind of idea of serving customer needs is beautiful, right? And I think this is where we got a little bit lost in retail today. We start to look introspectively, start to look at what is it we think we should do. And we start to look at all of the operational stuff, and we kind of lose track of this. What is the customer needing? What is the shopper journey? How many companies actually map the consumer journey? Very few did, right? And when you talk about consumer centricity, it's just a floskel in the yearly report, right? It's not something that is really lived. I think we need to revamp that. Let's really get close to what is the customers are looking for. Serve it with grace. It's as Chris beautifully said, it's not that complicated. It's simple, right? But we need to do it, and we have to love it, and we have to put energy into it, excitement into it.
So all of you have said the same thing. And when you change someone's life, whether it's a pair of pants or their face or making them look really nice or doing a makeover, when you make a difference in someone's life, there's not a better feeling. And listen, these gentlemen know me, and I think, Melissa, you know me. I'm not an overly emotional person, but listen to me. When a customer comes up to you and says, I come in this store every Saturday because your manager changed my life, your part-time person changed my life, and now I tell everybody, see, it gives me goosebumps even talking about it. So service hasn't gone away. We've put the emphasis on the wrong syllable. And the people that need to be taken care of are in the field. They're the ones who should be paid the most. They're the ones who make our business successful. So I always trained my corporate staff, and I had a huge corporate staff, that listen, our chain of command is etched in sand, not in cement. And I don't care what the hell your damn title is. You will ring up customers, you'll help them, you'll be stocking in the back. You won't just be sitting in your office, because that's not where it happens. It happens out in the field. So I agree with all of you, and you're also brilliant. And I took copious notes. I think she is.
Ian, I'm going to leave the last word on this to you. I'll tell them their service.
Okay, there were a couple of things I wanted to say. We'll talk about Lush again. I did a podcast a while ago, and they banned me from talking about Lush halfway through because I went on so much, but they're just so bloody good at it. When I was given a tour of their Oxford Street store a couple of years ago, Sergio, the former store manager there, is an Italian guy, and he gave me the tour. And I said, how did you end up managing this store? He goes, I worked for Lush in Italy. I don't know whether it was Milan or somewhere else. He says, I was invited over to see this Oxford Street store. And I said, one day I am going to manage this store. He quit his job in Italy.
he moved to a small town in the UK, started as a sales assistant. He was a store manager in Italy, worked his way up, and 4 years later became the manager of Oxford Street store. Now, there aren't many brands where I know their store staff would take a step back, move country, and invest 4 years of time to get back to the level of job title that they had before, because they were inspired by a flagship. And I think that's amazing. But also I did a store retail safari a couple of weeks ago, and the whole focus was on staff. It was a client of mine that delivers solutions to staff. They said, show us good staff. And I went, right, we're going to have a field day here. We only visited 3 stores. Lush, obviously, where Sarah, the store manager, gave an amazing tour. Then also the store manager of the Boss Street, Regent Street store gave an amazing tour about, and it was interesting because their perspective was premium rather than high street every day. And then I went to the Gymshark. Now, anyone that knows me know I was very critical of the Gymshark store when it opened 2 years ago. There were a lot of deep flaws in the design. But every time I have visited that store, they go, oh, right, the window's better. Oh, that's better, that's better, that's better. And Hannah Mercer is the general manager at Gymshark. I messaged her and said, look, I'm doing a store tour. Your staff are really cool. She arranged. And when we turned up, there were 5 members of staff on hand. We went into a specific room and they were invited in and they were given a tour and a free smoothie. And there were different people, each talking about every aspect of their department around the store. And people came away going, wow, this is amazing. I have never seen anything like this. And you see that power, you know, and I often say, and I think Torben touched on it, your staff are the living embodiment of your brand. Now, any other business would be horrified at the underinvestment in the people that are the physical touch point with their customers. Retail view them as this thing that needs to be pushed away. And you know, you want to understand what's going on in the world of retail, you can go and talk to your staff. Okay, this is free research and insight from the person that stood on your shop floor 37 hours a week. Why would you not tap into that knowledge? You know, and these are the aspects where I look around and go, they are, and I agree with what Linda says, you know, they should be better paid. And I know there's a real awkward balance of cost and return in retail, but you've got to reward them. And what I loved is also, I think it was Chris or Torben said, these people are not paid more, they're treated better, they're respected better, they're trained better. You don't have to always throw money at them. By all means, you should reward them, but it's not always about money. Sometimes it's about a sense of belonging. You saw with Sergio at Lush, you know, he would literally move country to get to something that he was inspired by, and that's by investing in the people. And every retailer should, and I appreciate Lush are in a higher margin environment than say grocery, but the principle is sound. Train them well, inspire them, look after them, reward them, and they will stay. You know, it's as simple as
Ian, it makes my heart sing, you know, as a former flagship store manager and as a store manager for nearly 20 years. The passion that those people that you've met, you can't buy that passion for a brand. It's inherent. It's because they really love what they do, but they've been treated well. So it's great to hear that there are such brilliant, you know, positive stories out there right now from people that really care, which is amazing. And actually a really lovely kind of way to end this podcast. But final question, as always, and I've no idea where this is going to go with all of you gallivanting all over the world. But I suppose to all of you then, what's coming up next? What's coming up over the next few months? Linda, let's start with you.
Well, listen, I've been doing a lot of training recently, so I'm really excited about where this conversation has gone, not only training retailers, but retailers and shopping centers together. And I really feel like that puts them both on the same playing field, if you will. And when you train them together, it's been just so fun. We've got a lot of new pop-ups. There's a lot of new brands that are excited still to open in retail. So I have 3 or 4 new clients that have new brands that are interested in opening new stores. So I'm really excited about that, working with Torben and Chris on something. And we've got some webinars coming up. So lots of fun, exciting things. And it's the best time of year coming up for all of us, right?
Golden quarter,
Christmas.
here we come. Ian, what's next for you?
It's going to be manic autumn for me, but in a wonderfully exciting way. I was just jotting down as Linda was talking. God, where am I going? And in the next 2 months, I'm doing events in London, Prague, Stockholm, Oslo, and New York, which is fabulous. I actually have had a little bit of downtime from travel because June nearly killed me. And so I've not been chasing around because the joy, July and August is a lot of clients go on holiday. So it's a bit of catching up.
Yeah.
But yeah, I love the fact, I mean, the retail safaris are things I love doing, and it's gone crazy. And that staff tour I did recently was one of the most inspiring ones, to sit there and hear store managers talk about their staff. I was like, everything is a little bit better in the world of retail than I thought yesterday because of talking to these people. So doing more of those is fabulous. But the event in Oslo I am super excited about is myself and my good friend Jack Stratton. He knows Nerona, who are an outdoor clothing brand, and they've opened a brand center in Oslo. And they turned to Jack a couple of months ago and said, if you want to use this space, you're welcome to. You can have it for free. So we're now creating our own event in Norway, which is scaring me witless and exciting me in equal measure. So that's the one I'm particularly excited.
Oh, I love that. Can't wait to see all the posts on LinkedIn as well, Ian. That's going to be very
There will
exciting.
be one or two, yes.
And the floral shirts, of course. Chris,
Yes.
what about you?
What's coming up in the next few months? Well, first of all, my annual Master of Ceremony in Cannes at MAPIC, the annual event. So looking forward to that. We're going to be ramping up significantly. That's the end of November. I'm also contributing to a couple of books, one which will be showcased in New York at the end of March, which is called That Impact Book. Absolutely amazing. Shah Moore, who had the idea in Australia and brought together some incredible people, specific topics we've been talking about, and we are going to launch that literally in Times Square at the end of March next year. So that's pretty amazing. I've got Dress in Gold. I'm not quite sure what that should look like, but I'm thinking back to the hip hop days. Maybe I can do some R&B,
MC Hammer.
get some more hair or something like that. And beyond that, on a
exciting.
business front, working on a big project in India, which I'm looking forward to continuing, advising on a shopping center development project over there. And then just helping emerging and small brands and startups, more to come on LinkedIn in the next few weeks around that. So keeping me off the streets.
I love that, Chris. How exciting again. And finally, Torben, what's coming up next for you?
I'm excited to start working with a few clients that are coming up, but I'm also super excited about something completely new, which I truly believe will change the game for brands, businesses, retailers. So I've been spending actually the last 12 months in isolation, more or less. I've been looking back at my more than 30 years of experience from big brands, big international brands, and I've been asking myself, what did I really learn? What was the essence? Because it feels like every time you start a new project or working with a client, we kind of reinvent the wheel again. I asked myself, why do we do that? What is really the cornerstones of business? And I kind of realized there are three: intel, strategy, and leadership. And when intel, strategy, and leadership work together in perfect harmony and unification, you can leverage a whole company. So I've been working together with Chris and Linda on a new approach that will bring all of those three together. And for business, it's simply about creating good vibe with the consumers and between team members in the company. And it's all with the purpose of cultivating bonds. And I believe when we do that really well, you don't have to worry so much about whether your bottom line is growing. It will grow as a byproduct. No, we need to focus on the right thing. So I'm super excited to work with Linda and Chris to stand up this new concept, which we call Imagineership.
I'm really excited that you're coming back on this podcast because you've never done a full episode. Really excited that you're coming back in a few weeks now to tell us
very much forward to that.
So much more about this, because I think it's a topic that's going to blow people's minds. It's bringing so many concepts together, but again, it's going back to basics. So really, really excited to let everyone hear that episode, Torben, and to really do a deep dive into this area. So much
exciting. Can't wait.
Super. Well, look, if you've enjoyed today's podcast episode, please do like and share it. Again, we've covered so much today. If you haven't already, please pop back and listen to episode 1 of season 7, where you'll hear us all ranting a little bit more about retail. Remember, of course, you can listen back to all other Retail Tea Break episodes on your favourite podcast platform or, of course, on YouTube. Connect with myself and all of today's guests if you haven't already on LinkedIn. I'll obviously pop all their contact details and websites and various social media handles in the show notes. They, of course, can be found on the retailadvisor.ie. Well, Linda, Ian, Chris, Torben, so much appreciative of what you've talked about today and your time. Thank you so much for joining me.
Always a
Thank
pleasure.
you.
Thanks, Melissa. Thanks, everyone.
Thank you.
Thank you, everyone.